Hey, Joey, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, my name is Joey Russo. Uh, Born and raised in San Diego, California. Grew up skateboarding, bodyboarding, and just always had people telling me that I had the gift of gab, right? So early stages, I wanted to follow my grandfather's footsteps. He was at Top Gun in San Diego, but as I grew older, and I just realized that sales is something that just speaks to me. I like helping people solve problems, and just it's something that not everyone can do. It's not something that everyone can be trained to do. But around age 14, my aunt started dating a guy, now my uncle, that was a partner in a technology company, fellow surfer. So he used to drive 30 minutes inland to pick me up and drive me all the way back to the beach, surf for a few hours, take me home. And so he started coaching me and saying, man, you're just a very natural conversationalist. And so he started kind of grooming me, and we made a deal that he wasn't going to hand me a technology position. So I had to find my way into and get a couple years under my belt, prove myself basically. And then he would help me, or refer me into a position, and that essentially all those steps happen.
Yeah.
So
And do you find a lot of analogies between surfing and selling?
yes and no. I would say that surfing, in hindsight, so step backs, I now reside in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm about 6.5 hours from the closest
Best surfing
wave
in the world.
yeah. There's not much. It's flat today, but as it was yesterday.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, it's one of the most selfish sports in because you sit out there. It could be 30 minutes between sets, and you're fighting, sometimes hopefully only 5-10 guys, but sometimes there's 40-50 people in the water, all jockeying for that one of 5-6 waves, right? So that competition aspect, absolutely, and making sure you're fit, you're in your what's that word, like your ability is there, that when that time comes, boom, it's your wave.
Yeah, because I got to believe, when you're riding a wave, it's a lot like riding a deal. You can't really predict everything, but you've kind of got to use your history, your experience of how you rid previous waves to ride this one in.
Absolutely. And it also down to equipment. So if you translate that, it's your strategy, right? And do I have the right fins on? Is this the right board for the conditions, right? And so absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of people do get into sales because somebody says, oh, they're a people person, or the gift of gab, which it's a good signal. It's a good indicator.
Right.
Did it translate well for you, or were there a lot of hiccups along the way?
It did. I think so after I graduated, I serving tables while I was going to school. And I honestly believe that is one of the biggest things that helps, because, your customer doesn't care that the ice machine is broken, or that you had to walk to the other side of the restaurant to get their, soda refilled. They just want their food.
Soda.
Yeah, right. And the cook quit, whatever, mid shift, whatever. They just care that what they ordered is hot or cold, right, and on time. So being able to keep all of that hidden and put that smile on in front of the client is key. And so that.
Well, that's it, because I've noticed, because everyone talks about sports and how that translates to sales, but not enough people talk about how hospitality translates to being a great salesperson, because like what you described, you're in the middle. You didn't cause the problem, but your job is to make it look like there is no problem.
Exactly.
Because telling the client about all the problems in the back office doesn't correct the problem.
No, you're right.
It makes it worse. It's like,
It absolutely makes it worse, because then it's like, especially if you're talking, 6-7 figure deals, they're like, wait, I mean, what am I?
there's an issue.
Yeah. What am I? You want me to entrust in us?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And what got you out of San Diego? What, you didn't like the weather?
the weather's terrible. I don't know what people say. No, I just, quality, cost of living,
Yeah. Taxes.
and taxes, politics, all that's fun stuff, right? I was looking for, also my wife is from the Midwest. And so she just felt like the public education that she received out of California, we weren't getting the same for our children.
Yeah. And was sales a natural thing? Did you like it immediately, or did it take a while to adjust?
Good question. I think, well, it's funny, maybe a step back into how I got into sales. So my girlfriend, now wife at the time, so we've been together since we were 19 years old, and her dad was a sales manager for a local radio station. And so he said, why don't you come in? There's a sales aptitude test that I give all of my potential candidates, why don't you take it? So I took it. And at the time I scored the highest out of anyone that he had ever interviewed. Right. So he took that into his boss and said, hey, I'd like to hire this guy. And he said, no way, he's too young. And so a little age discrimination there, but he said, fine, I'll tap into my network. And he helped me land my first sales job in the power sports industry. So I was selling motorcycles, ATVs, watercraft. And so at a young age, still going to school, it was fun. I sold fun.
Yeah.
But it was 100% commission.
Oh.
So, first sales job. So when you say hiccups, yeah, I mean, I that natural conversation piece, I was able to get people to warm up very quickly. And, and I was successful at that role. But when we found out, now married, found out that we were having our first child, I needed something a little bit more stable, right? That and 2000, this was around 2005, 2006. And in hindsight, the crash of '08 that everyone talks about, that actually impacted the power sports industry 2 years before. And the day I resigned and cleaned out my desk, I had a stack of deals that were about an inch thick. Well, a deal was three, maybe 5 pieces of paper. So think about the thousands of dollars in commission that we just couldn't get banks to buy the deals.
Oh,
and the banks shut off the fund. So they saw it come, in my opinion, they saw it coming 2 years before the actual crash.
Because I got to believe that those are the most risky of
100%. You can hide a bike, there's no
repossessing it. There's no collateral.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking high 700, 800 scores.
Not getting it. Yeah. And
so,
what was it like then getting into technology sales?
Yeah. So I resigned. My parents' neighbor, I lived at home they lived across the street from us for about 14 years. And so my buddy Jeff ended up starting at a company in physical IT distribution. So think everything in a data center, the racks, the cooling, fiber optic cable, all that physical security as well. So he helped me land an entry-level position in sales support.
Yeah.
Did my 2 years. So went knocking on my uncle's door, and sure enough, he got me an interview with his his software company based out of Orange County. So I went to work there, and it unfortunately didn't work out. The management and it didn't click. But I worked on a floor with other teams, and the camaraderie between those teams, and I was friends with the VPs and the managers, but unfortunately my remote manager and it didn't really work out. And so it was really tough. One of the hardest things I've had to do was go back to my uncle and tell him, like, hey man, I got to tap out.
Yeah.
But
was it a style thing, or was it just a view on sales?
Or? It was a style. Management through fear. When I'm seeing
intimidation.
Like it was intimidating. And the other managers on my floor were all just laid back, and all their guys everyone was crushing it, So, but timely, my previous manager at the distribution company called me and said, hey, there's a position open on the inside, like, so a promotion from where I was. And I said, yes, let's go. So I went this company back to the other company, did that for about 2 years, and then went back under one of the other managers that I used to work side by side with.
Yeah.
And that's when my career really took off.
And what type of manager do you work best under or with?
Well, so at that time, I worked for a gentleman that was actually a year younger than me, but he had started in tech right out of college. So he worked his way up faster than I did. And just autonomy. Micromanagement, to me and me, do not mix.
I don't think it does with any performance type of function.
It's fair.
Right? Because if you're making, you're assembling a car, micromanagement might work. Right? But if you're creating something, it's a creative process, it's a collaborative, it's an interpersonal skill. Micromanaging that doesn't really add any value.
You're right. And I think if I go back in time, if the younger me, the early inside guy me, could know that, take a step back and say, okay, boss, like, check his boxes, but do my thing, right? The results would have been significantly higher.
Well, and this is what micromanagers don't get, is that the people are just checking the boxes. They're not doing the things that you think they're doing. They're not idiots. They know what you're looking at.
Exactly.
And you're telling them what they're looking at. So of course they go, okay, you want a brown suit? It's now brown, right? Now I got to do my job.
Right. Yeah.
And
fair.
It's crazy because everyone talks about, oh, well, revenue's a lagging indicator. So they try and find leading indicators. But as soon as you tell people that's what they're looking at, they now show you what you want to see.
You're right.
Instead of doing what you think they're doing.
Spot on.
And how dumb can you be not to see
that? I haven't been at that level to know what the stress is and what's weighing on them. But I've been on the other side of the knee-jerk reactions and the decisions of, well, just offer them, end of the quarter. And it's like, hey, boss, I'm sorry. I did everything I can. It's totally out of my hands. This deal's not coming in. Yeah. But it's not dead, but it's not, oh, we'll just offer them a discount. And I would do that early in my career. Well, guess what? That just cost us revenue that I knew was coming. But once you give that price break, you can't really hard to get it back. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Right, because it most likely will still not close, but then they'll show you the quote from last quarter.
Oh yeah, they forgot the first quote that was
said. Where'd that guy? I haven't seen that.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I just have this one. So yeah.
And plus, in B2B, it's not that person's money; it's the company's money.
Exactly.
So, do they really care if it's 10% less this month than next month?
No.
It's still the same amount of work, if not more, for them, because now they have to go and push to do something that's right for the company that doesn't have any material impact to them.
Fair. I think the only times, and it's been just in my last role, is when that deal pushes that it impacts their personal project deadline,
Yes.
that things
That's
move.
when they do things.
Yep.
They do it on their timeline.
Right.
Which you can influence. It's not that you can't. It's just that you have to first realize that.
100%.
So what were some of the key either learning points or epiphanies that you had along the way on the B2B enterprise side?
Well, I think in my first role, with it being like tangible products, so I'm selling physical IT. I mean, I spent more of my time just customer service and chasing missing
Pieces.
pallets, or this misshipped, wrong PO, just all this busy work. But I will tell you that that helped me organize and prepare for the enterprise where I sell air now, right? It's software.
Yeah.
But it's all those other pieces behind the scenes that you have to check those boxes to get deals done.
Well, let's talk about it, because you're selling really insurance today, essentially.
It's a great way to look at it. Absolutely.
And a lot of people, everyone wants to buy insurance after their car's in an accident, right?
Oh yeah.
But before, it's just an expense.
Right.
Everyone knows you should have it, you need to have it, but it's expensive.
You're right.
How do you get people interested and keep that interest moving?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm about a month into my new role here with Minerva Labs, but I mean, it is so timely that, what's scary, honestly, to take a step back, is that companies are spending their increased budget, they're increasing their budget on that insurance, on the antivirus, the endpoint protection. But last year, every 11 seconds, companies were hit with ransom attacks. $20 billion in ransomware payouts last year. So how is it that they're spending and it's not working? So with this solution, we actually prevent ransom attacks at a level below all of the other endpoint solutions on the market.
And who is the person that you typically contact? Because everyone chases the CISO.
Right.
But
well,
they're kind of overwhelmed. It's like,
yeah. So I just had this conversation with my brother the other day, but I've had the most success in targeting the enterprise architects, because the way I envision it is they're the ones with the crystal ball. They might have a directive straight from the CTO, the CISO, or they're in meetings
functionally,
right? And that they have a pulse on everything that's coming 12 to 18 months from now. So, and that times up with my previous sales cycles, 12 to 18 months to close a deal. So that's who I target. Now, since I moved here and I put down the boards, picked up the golf clubs, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's one of the most humbling 2 years of my life, right? Got the best, latest and greatest driver. You get all your stuff and you take, and you're practicing, and you get on the course and you just hit one into the woods or whatever, right? And it's being able to come back from that and like settle back in. Okay, that shot doesn't that's the past, and that's kind of like, the at bats, right? Not getting to the CISO or getting blown off 50 times a day for that one, and then you stone one in there to a foot and tap in for birdie, right? That golf, my wife and I recently joined a golf club, and I found that, randomly being paired with either a member and a guest, that, I've just in the last month, 4 hours with a CEO in you can't get that anywhere.
Right.
It's priceless.
And that's what people say, those days are over, but I don't think so.
I would say they were, and COVID helped bring people back to wanting to be outside.
Yes.
Tired of, no offense, but the video calls and the phone call, right?
Yeah.
I want some fresh air.
So. Want some fresh air. I want to talk to somebody.
Yeah. Shake someone's hand, right. With some sanitizer, whatever.
Well, let's go back to the architect, because ironically enough, when I sold security, that's who I sold it to. And everyone in the company told me I was wasting my time. And I go, well, the CISO doesn't really understand this yet, because I was selling to a future problem, not a current problem. The network people don't care about this because they got stacks and stacks of what they think I do, but they don't, and they don't care. That architect has time on their hands. They are the person that goes to the conferences, that writes the blogs, that talks to other people, that doesn't have as much line responsibility that other people do.
You're spot on.
But is highly respected, and they got there because they are a natural champion, a natural kind of maverick, kind of somebody a little outside of the do what I'm told, and that's it.
You're spot on. Yeah. Did you find that it was difficult to get to them, or how did you, what was your angle of cracking that?
It took me a little bit of time, and it was crazy because I went from selling pure infrastructure software to selling a network device, a hardware security in the DMZ. Wow. I had no idea what a DMZ was. I thought it was something out of Vietnam.
That's right.
Camo face. And the company was a startup, and it came highly recommended, but it was the third round of salespeople they had hired, which is really a red flag.
Yeah, it's tough.
They hired security people first, then network people. I was the first software guy they hired.
Interesting.
And I had no rapport with CISOs. I had zero rapport with network people, but I knew the software people. And so I had some contacts, but what I did was I go, what do they buy before they buy me? And they bought this piece of middleware. At the time, it was BEA that got bought by Oracle. So I befriended the BEA reps. And I go, when you close your big deal, could you introduce me to the architect there? Not before, but after you close that big deal.
That's great strategy.
And they had this user group meeting. I go, happy to present and fund any of those events you want. I bought the pizza, rented the room, got the beer, a couple $100. And I talk about, okay, once you go outside the DMZ, you lose all your security. All that beautiful code that you wrote is now open, and who knows what they're going to do to it.
Wow. Yeah.
And then they all lit up, and they go, they don't want their reputation at risk because they did something not knowing what this thing that could happen will happen, because they're not security people.
Right.
But they care about security, because downtime that's the ROI. It's the downtime, the ransom, the intangible long-term costs.
Exactly. And brand, right?
Brand,
so
all that
damage to the reputation. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's like when somebody reads a resume or a LinkedIn profile from some big ransomware attack and go, and you want to work here?
Right. Yeah. You manage your data, like how,
You're going to bring
yeah,
that with us.
exactly.
And how do you keep the deal moving now? Because the architects are great, but it's not their budget. Or is it?
No, so typically what it is they have a directive from either CTO or CISO, or but or it's a collective, and then they go through and there's multiple in the most painful processes. It's RFI, so then RFP, then proof of concept, right? So it's a very long, drawn out process, but it's not their budget from my experience. It's a director level, it's a VP level, and depending on what who you're selling into, like my previous life, it was sensitive data detection. So getting organizations to unlock all the doors and let us in to go find their baby, their most sensitive, the PI, the PHI, and so you think about each platform. Now we're talking, oh, well, they have Oracle, they have Microsoft, they have AWS and Azure. And that would be easy. But you're talking, 10, 15 platforms. You got to get buy-in from each one of those department heads or DBAs, right? And then InfoSec. Then you add privacy in the mix, right? With like GDPR, CCPA, and all the different state privacy regulations. Now legal's involved too. And they have budget, and they're buying software for what I experienced the first time for most of them. Challenging.
Yeah. And what do you feel is your superpower, your strongest sales characteristic?
Well, I feel like, I learned early. My first software role was selling to DBAs. Well, I'm not technical, right? So they'd sniff me out in 2 seconds. Like, you're just a sales guy. Like, stop. Yeah. So then I went forward with that. Hey, I'm just the sales guy, but I am the face. I'm the quarterback of my company to my customers or prospects. And so it's my strategy is to be 1 to 2 steps ahead at every turn, whether during those long 12-month cycles, getting to procurement early. And I forget, it was a man who it was, but someone was saying, well, why do you waste your time filling out new vendor onboarding packets when you haven't been awarded the deal yet? Well, they're pretty much copy and paste.
Yeah.
So why not take an hour, 2 hours, tee it up? But also, I feel like it's like I put that in the ether, right? I put that in the universe. Like, I'm getting this deal. It's that conviction. And, I think listen to Rob Dyrdek quite a bit, but, it's that magic layer that it's real. And I'm sitting here talking to you because of it.
Well, you're preempting the objection by telling the people that you're just a sales rep.
Yeah,
to take it away. And with you're also assuming the sale by getting the vendor information set up, and people will naturally go with the momentum.
Exactly. And so how much easier is it to say, okay, you awarded the deal. Okay, great. Well, I already talked to Bob in procurement, and is it okay if I just go ahead and submit the packet? Wait, the packet's done? Yeah, I've had it done for months. Like, I can't tell you how many times my previous clients would say, man, that was the most painless process. Like, it was such an easy, from the paperwork side. I mean, software, we're going to have our hiccups here and there, but just make it as painless as possible.
It's really good. Hey, Joey, really appreciate your time. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Joey Russo, Minerva Labs, or check us out. It's minerva-labs.com. And God forbid, if anyone experiences a breach or you're, under attack, click the Why Minerva button at the top left, big red button on the right, fill out the form, and that'll put you in contact with our incident response team. And since 2014, not a single Minerva customer or someone under attack has ever paid a penny in ransomware or in ransom.